from Mason after he walked the first two?
It's just one of those things. An elite player just bared down and decided to take over. He did. I think the challenge that Duran had just changed a little bit of the momentum, just enough where he could take a sigh of relief that I threw a strike, and then after that it was lights out.
Do you think there was an element of atmosphere, nerves, or anything just with the intensity of the rivalry against LA? Or
I don't think so. Not with Mason. No, he was pretty dialed in as a person, and mentally tough as anybody we got. So it was just one of those, probably a little bit mechanical tweak, and Ruben went out there, talked to him, and then got a pitch call on the ABS, and after that it was just fine.
What did you think of Michael King's night and the 7 shutout innings he was able to provide for you guys?
Yeah, one of the best games he's pitched as a Padre, I think. He was in control from the very beginning. A lot of punch outs early, and then hung on, made some great pitches at the end to get through 7.
A lot of things have to happen for a 1-0 game, like the defense, Duran's arm, the pitching. What did you just make of the way this game went?
Yeah, Duran gets a ton of credit, along with Michael King. Those two controlled the game, and Duran throwing those 2 runners out were huge, keeping Michael's pitch count down, giving that extra inning. We got off to a lead early. That also helps. You feel like, even though it's 1-0, it's just a little bit better feeling than if it's 0-0, if you're down 1-0. Feel very good with Michael on the mound. Him and Duran are working well together. It was, pretty awesome to see. It was an old school shutout tonight.
You had more home warming. You stuck with Jason. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, I stuck with Jason. I felt good about the matchups past at bats between Otani and Adam and Betts and Adam. Kind of just went with my gut a little bit on that one, but also felt good about Jason's history against the Dodgers too. And I felt like I had Adrian ready for Freeman then after that. So a little bit of a roll of the dice, I guess, more than traditional, but felt really good with Jason out there on the mound against those hitters.
You guys haven't had many starters getting to the 7th or work through the 7th. How big is that going forward to start to see some of that from the rotation?
Yeah, that was huge. If I remember, that's only the second time we've gotten somebody get all the way through the 7th, like Randy did in Colorado. So, it just sets us up, the bullpen a little bit better as we go forward, and allows us to keep those guys fresh as possible, as we navigate the schedule of a 162-game season.
We've obviously seen a lot of impressive things from Mason this year, but his ability today to kind of hone it in when it wasn't there for those first 10-11 pitches, what does that maybe say to you about who he is as a competitor? Yeah,
you're right. Normally we see a pitcher kind of struggle throwing strikes, and he maybe picks it up a little bit, but not as the way that Mason did, where he just went from throwing a lot of balls to just throwing all strikes. So, that's a pretty big flip of the switch. Just talks about how mentally tough he is and his ability to move on to the next pitch and go one pitch at a time.
You mentioned maybe mechanical tweak. What was it? What did you
I
see?
had no idea. Throw it a little harder. I'm sure Ruben had something that he told him. He may not even said anything mechanical, but just the fact of taking a little bit of breather, going out there, settle everybody down, allowing him to stop thinking about throwing strikes for a little bit and just go and compete.
Can I ask you a couple questions about Mason? What does it mean to have a player like that who can be your closer right now?
Yeah, it means a lot. It's very comforting to have him come in at the end of the games, and you feel really good about how the game's going to end. Will he be perfect the entire season? I don't know. He's not. Humans aren't perfect, but sure, right now he's pretty good, and we feel good about him. No matter how it goes.
I mean, he's doing things right now that if it continued, he'd be doing things that no relief pitcher has ever done. Did you see that in him when you took over?
I think that's why AJ traded for him last year. We gave up a lot for Mason, and we felt really good about the player that we were getting in return and having control over him for a few years. And he's definitely lived up to the billing and been everything that we've wanted and needed with the Padres. I feel like he's carried on the tradition of the San Diego Padres closer, above and beyond.
If I ask you one follow-up on that, for people who are not familiar with him, I mean, he's getting publicity around the country, but still to be more, what would you tell people who are not familiar with what his strengths are, why he's able to do what he's doing right now?
His number one attribute is that he's a great human being. He treats people with respect, is kind to everybody, gives them the time of day, that he doesn't have to do all the time. And I think just who he is as a person, how he treats his family, how he treats his teammates, is probably number one thing about him.
How much do you think, just the workload, not that it's too much, but just he has been working a lot lately, do you think that's affecting? There's been a lot less precision on his part.
Yeah, I think we were spoiled for the first month of the season and how electric he was and how he didn't miss a pitch for like a month. you know, and so when he misses a pitch, we get a little worried. Or, you know, like tonight, he walked 2 guys. But I think maybe something to do with it. You know, going 1+, throwing 33 pitches is not easy when you're not used to doing that, and especially that high intensive situation, throwing that hard, it's not an easy thing to recover. He's doing everything behind the scenes that we could ever ask of him, and you know, it's our job to be very cognizant of keeping him healthy and not overusing him.
So you expected Michael to be one of your top guys. You lost a couple of your other top guys. The fact that he appears to be ascending and keep doing that, like, how important is that to you? Because a team like you probably need a guy like that.
Yeah, I think that was the discussion in the offseason when Michael was a free agent and, you know, deciding, you know, we knew we needed starting pitching and wanted to sign someone. And Michael was at the top of our list because he has the potential to be an ace. Can be an ace if he's healthy. And so far he's showed that this year. And, you know, that's what we have come to expect out of Michael. You know, it's a hard thing to be an ace on a staff, but he showed so far that he's capable of being that guy for us.
How important is what Andujar has done for you guys this season been?
Yeah, pretty amazing. You know, he's kept us going offensively when we've had some people scuffling. And, you know, every time he's swinging, it feels like he's hitting a line drive somewhere, whether it's at somebody or tonight over the fence and then one through the hole. So right now he's taken some of our best at-bats of anybody in our lineup and, you know, been a catalyst for us being able to score runs and win some games.
Was there any thought at all about bringing Mason in the 8th for Born Better?
Not today. You know, Kevin just kind of articulated with his question of not trying to wear him out. We need this guy for the long haul. We need him for, you know, we want him to have a long, illustrious career without injury. And so we've got to take care of him, not just for the Padres, but for him himself. And, you know, part of that is not pitching him 1+ every single night.
Articulated, very good.
Thank you.
The-
Can't spell it.
The line out by Tatis, it was the 50th hard hit out of the season for him, way in leading the league.
Yeah, he's a little frustrated to say the least. And I think, you know, the attention that he's getting, you know, for struggling at the plate, you know, everybody, you know, we talk about the hard hits, but sometimes you say, well, that's tough luck. But, you know, the ball he hit today in the first inning was about as hard hit as any ball we've had all year, and it's just going right at people. Eventually that's going to turn. I'm looking forward to when that does, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Craig, Nick talks about the fact that you guys have been underperforming, or at least not performing the way you would like, at least offensively. Any thoughts on that, the fact that you're winning games still with your top guys performing the way you would like to?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of guys do really well. You know, Gavin Sheets was National League Player of the Week this week. So, you know, our offense is getting better. It's continuing to get better. Yamamoto pitched a great game tonight. He's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, if not one of the best, if the best. And he threw a great game tonight, mixed up his pitches really well. So we battled him as best we can. We hit a ton of line drives again tonight. You know, I think that's kind of our goal as a team, is to lead the league in line drives. And one thing we cannot control is whether they go at somebody or if they hit a hole. And eventually we believe that they're going to hit a lot of holes.
Was Duran like a hidden gem for you guys, considering he was like 11 seasons in the minors and now it's like one of the greatest catchers you've ever seen, at least for today?
Yeah, you can see that. It was definitely a Rodolfo Duran game. You know, if he'd have got that line drive to left field to fall in, he had, couldn't have had a better game. Honestly, threw a couple guys out, caught a shutout. We feel really comfortable with him behind the plate. And you're right, a hidden gem. You know, when we got him last year as a 6-year free agent, we didn't know a ton about him, and he just proved that he's, everything that we needed and wanted, from a guy that could be our third catcher. And right now he's doing a really good job, filling in for Campy and, handling the ace on our staff and shutting out, one of the best teams in all of baseball.